So first things first, if you look down below, you'll find an invitation to donate to this channel. I put it there because several people have suggested that I do it. The latest person is a lady called Fiona Butterworth. No idea who she is. Suggested that I do this. So if you get some value from this, then consider making some kind of donation, because I do have plans for this, because I've been quite surprised at the response and the level of interest. Anyway, if in 2 months' time the balance is still zero, then yeah, I'll probably still be producing these podcasts, but might be less inclined to produce some very detailed works which I have in mind, and we'll probably focus more on my business activities, which I have ignored recently. Anyway, this podcast is about a really sort of touchy topic. A lot of people are very, very heavily identified with their emotions. Obviously, particularly emotional types of people. They believe that their emotions are very legitimate things. They're possibly the things that define them. You find people saying, "I'm a very compassionate person." Well, they might be compassionate until somebody pushes in front of them in a queue. Or they might say that they're a very generous person, and they're very generous until they've got nothing and they don't feel like being generous. So our ego flatters itself with these kinds of things. And I'm going to be talking about, well, not only the emotions, but the role of reason. And before I get into that, I want to qualify what I mean by reason, because for a lot of people, reason equates with sort of being a robot, driven by logic and science and mathematics. I'm not talking about that kind of reason. The only reason that is of interest to me is the reason that says, I want to pursue what is best for me and best for everybody else. It's as simple as that. That is a good a definition of reason as you'll probably get. So, does dumping millions of tons of plastic in the ocean qualify as reason? Well, no, it doesn't. And does sabotaging your colleagues' work in your job where you work qualify as reason? Well, no, it doesn't. So that's what I mean by reason. Emotions do not allow us to pursue the good being what is best for you and what is best for everybody else. So a very good example is the fact that most of the world's wealth is concentrated in very few hands. Is that reasonable? No, it isn't, because it isn't good for people and the population in general. So anyway, that was a bit of a preamble. Let me get on to what is essentially an article I wrote on the Corporeal Fantasy blog. It seems to have caught fire a little bit. I've never seen so many Facebook things, whatever you call them, on it. Anyway, so I have produced a few podcasts recently on the nature of the emotions, and the previous one was basically about how we are attached to our suffering, how we actually quite enjoy our suffering because it's a comfortable place. And I've been posting some things on the Corporeal Fantasy Facebook page which have clearly irritated quite a few people. That was quite deliberate, I knew they would. And they've irritated them because I've been challenging this whole thing of the emotions, the sanctity that we place on the emotions. That we are kind, compassionate people, that we are caring people, that we are passionate people, that we, and you see these stupid comments on Twitter or something. I am passionate about customer service at my business, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Anyway, so I've been producing these kind of things, and yeah, it's got the kind of kickback I would expect, because people are very, very identified with their emotions and their suffering. So I've taken Gurdjieff's advice, and this podcast will be the whole hog, including the postage. So, having the start of this podcast mentioned donations, I expect that some subscribers will very, very quickly sort of untick their subscription after hearing this. I think the place to start is to say that many people confuse reason with emotions. Now, when people look at society, they will say things like, well, where has reason got us? Where has science and, whatever, ideologies and intellectual activity got us? Well, it means you haven't got toothache right now. It means you're not hiding in a cave sheltering from predators. It means you're not particularly frightened probably of thunder and lightning and thinking that they're gods. It means that your children don't die when they're 2 or 3 years old. It means you don't die when you're about 30 years old. It means that if you've got a broken limb, that it can be fixed, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so reason's done a reasonable... didn't mean that as a pun, but reason has done a reasonable amount for us. And people then say, well, things like Marxism, all the isms, all these intellectual creations that have created so much suffering. Well, it's not so. It's not the intellectual creations that create the suffering. It's the emotions behind them that create the suffering. In reality, reason is entirely powerless. You can reason about whatever you want, and it will not change your behavior if there's an emotion in the way. So you might say to yourself that tomorrow I am not going to be a bad-tempered person. Then tomorrow comes and you wake up and you feel like shit, and the dog's shit on the carpet, and you've just kicked your cup of coffee over, and your partner's spilled their coffee over the keyboard on your computer, and you get outside and somebody's run a key down the side of your car, and you're not going to be the nicest person to be around if that happens, despite all your reasonable assertions about your behavior. So it's really the emotions where all the power lies, and Hitler's a very good example in all of this. He was said to have excited all the nasty little biases and prejudices that people had, and the people who followed him were driven by that. His philosophy would have had no traction if there wasn't emotional energy behind it. So without this super putrid emotions, he would have had no power, and his ideology would have been impotent. So, a brief list of the emotions, most of which are destructive: hatred, disdain, envy, jealousy, pride, greed, fear, hope, and so on. And even the so-called positive emotion of love can quickly turn into hate. Just watch a jilted lover spit venom at someone that maybe just a week ago they adored. That's how quickly emotions change. It's a given that any human behavior based on emotions will be inconstant. This is because emotions are purely passive responses to the environment. Something nice happens, you feel great. Something bad happens, you feel terrible. That's just the way it is. It's your body telling you that it's doing well or it's not doing well. That's all the emotions are telling you. And that's all emotions are. No need to put them on a pedestal. No need to talk about ecstatic moods and sort of consuming love. These are just the body saying that it is very, very happy because it's had some delightful sexual experience, or someone is flattering the hell out of them, or whatever it is that makes somebody feel good. So as things change, so do your emotions, and so you can never rely on a person who's driven by strong emotions. If somebody comes to you gushing, I think most people know someone who comes to them and is gushing is just as likely to want to slit their throat the following week. 1 minute they're over you like a bad rash, and the next minute they want you hung, drawn and quartered. Gurdjieff commented on this. He said that emotions always evoke the opposite in response. If you're gushing over somebody, at some point they'll probably just tell you to fuck off, because that's the kind of dynamic that's in play. So if we look at the suffering we impose on each other, we will find that emotions are the driving engine. Religious zeal, ideological frenzy. So it has, these things. If religion was just a purely intellectual activity, no one would have been harmed. You need zeal behind there, an emotion. I am right, everyone else is wrong. I am strengthened, and either everybody joins my club or I will destroy them. These are the emotions that are working. So ideological frenzy, racial hatred, and nationalism exist at the macro or societal level, and then envy and jealousy operate at the personal level. And actually Spinoza went as far as to suggest that envy was the default emotional state for most human beings. Not for everybody, but for many, many people. So, contrary to the idea that emotions make us human, it is emotions that make us inhuman. They drive all the flavors of cruelty and abuse. The person of reason, so remember this, where I started with reason. Reason is just the pursuit of the good for yourself and for everybody else. What is the good? The good is for you to be what you are, without coercion, and without threat of any kind of punishment or any constraints. So the good, which is for you and for everybody else to be what they are, is basically what a person of reason would pursue. Not mathematics, not logic, not all that stuff. I mean, logic might be interesting, but it's not really the kind of reason I'm talking about here. So anyway, a person who professes to be a person of reason is very often derided by people who put their emotions up on a pedestal. They might portray images of geeks with no social skills, or an inability to warmly relate to other human beings. This is really not so. Someone who is reasonable has the self-awareness to be kind and considerate, even when the other party is not. Kindness, compassion, and goodwill are the children of reason, not of the emotions. Because one day somebody might think that they're compassionate, and the next day they might want to, slap someone across the face, or whatever, something that is definitely not compassionate. Because that's how the emotions work. On a good day you feel compassionate, on a bad day you want to rip somebody's throat out. That's the reality of our emotional life. But if there is some level of reason operating within a person as well, then maybe other things can happen. So the emotions can only operate by like or dislike. This is good for me, this is bad for me. I am happy, I am unhappy. It's kind of binary like that. Your emotions don't make you human. You share your emotional nature with the animals. 1 minute they're elated, next minute they're deflated. Give a dog a bone, it's happy. Shout at it because it's pissed in the corner of the room, and it will be very, very unhappy. And Gurdjieff said one of the first things to establish in life is that you do not live and die like a dog, constantly buffeted around by circumstances and emotions, so there's no central place within yourself that is at least watching what's going on. So, yeah, there's nothing mandatory here. If you are happy to be a leaf in the wind, relying upon good or bad circumstances to determine your emotional state, then all this will be meaningless. However, if your suffering and that of others is of concern to you, then it might be at least worth considering that reason as the pursuit of the good, of the pursuit of people being able to be what they are, so that kind of reason might be worth looking at and pursuing. Now, I'll just go back to where I started. I'm aware that, in a sense, these podcasts take people so far, and I get requests to produce more of these podcasts. Well, that's fine. It takes time and energy on my part to do it. But more detailed and, well, I don't know, maybe some very practical stuff would be material that I might develop. It would be far more in depth, and I don't know where it would go, but if I'm going to do that, then I need some support. So if you get something from these, please give something back.